word, everybody. Welcome back to the By the Horns podcast presented by Toyota. And know that Toyota has more all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive vehicles than any other brand. So make sure you find yours and shine on. Toyota, let's go places. I'm Cam Smith. You know my man's Drew Stevens. We're back again to recap a very interesting first 5 games of the season for this Bulls team. Now, Drew, we already had our recaps for the first 4, but the 5th game made it really interesting because it was against the Orlando Magic and the Paolo Banchero-led Orlando Magic and the I just dropped 50 on the Indiana defenseless Pacers Orlando Magic and Paolo Banchero. So you have one of the best teams, in my opinion, in the Eastern Conference coming into your building. The Bulls came off a nice win against the Memphis Grizzlies, down 20 at one point in Memphis, came back to win that ball game. No, John Morant didn't play, but Jaren Jackson Jr. played. Desmond Bane definitely played, and the rest of their starters and rotations played. But the Bulls were able to really bounce back and have a great performance. I'm talking about Zach LaVine, Nikola Vucevic. I mean, it was so many guys, Kobe White, Josh Giddey, that played well. Unfortunately for this Bulls team, during that game in the first quarter, Lonzo Ball, when trying to go for a steal, broke his fall as he was falling down and sprained his right wrist. So he's going to be sidelined for the next 10 days, according to CHSN Bulls insider Casey Johnson. And Casey spoke to Lonzo, and Lonzo was saying that he has to kind of keep that wrist in one position, can't really move it around because he doesn't want that sprain to go to a grade 2 or a grade 3. So right now it's just a grade 1 sprain, but he will be out for 10 days. But still, to Lonzo's credit, hurt the wrist in the first quarter, Drew, battled his way back, was plus 16 that night, played a lot of defense, was phenomenal for that Bulls team to get the win, and it set up a nice matchup against the Orlando Magic Wednesday night because we were in the building. A lot of people were in the building because everyone wanted to anticipate to see, okay, is this Bulls team real? Well, ladies and gentlemen, the Bulls are 3-2 after those first 5 games. And so what we have to do right now on this pod, and we know that a lot of people out there had their doubts about this Bulls team. Even Drew and I were looking at that first 5 like, it'll be really challenging for them to keep their head above water because you had some really good teams. You start out on the road against the New Orleans Pelicans. You go on the road again against the Milwaukee Bucks. You return home on a back-to-back against the Oklahoma City Thunder. You go to Memphis Monday. You come back home against the Orlando Magic. But the Bulls found themselves winning 3 out of those 5 games, Drew. So we got to give all respect and all flowers to this Bulls team and Billy Donovan because we heard them talk about the style of pace that they wanted to play, the three-point attempts that we're going to have, and just the overall up-tempo offense that they want to bring for this 24-25 season. And through 5, Drew, it's all worked out.
For the most part, it definitely has. I was thinking when the schedule first came out, okay, maybe they go 1-4, maybe. But definitely looking at a possible 0-5 start as being in the cards. But they've held true to everything they've said they wanted to do coming into the season. Billy talked about how hard the guys work to be in the best shape they could be in to play this type of pace through the whole game, making sure to try to wear down opponents. He even spoke to the fact that their pace is playing into their three-point shooting as the games go along and just how much more open they're getting on these catch-and-shoot threes or pull-up threes, whatever the case may be, because the defenders just – they don't have quite the same legs as they may have had when the game first started. So they're staying true to it, man, and they deserve a lot of credit. Their last night was the first time they won a game while still turning the ball over more than 9 times and not shooting an astronomical percentage from beyond the arc. So that speaks to just them continuing to fight something that going into the Orlando game, you and I kind of expressed our concerns about just the way that the Magic have played them recently, having won the last 5 meetings against the Bulls, and just the way they get after it, man. They are real scrappy, especially against the Bulls, for whatever reason. A lot of trash talking going back and forth, but the Bulls showed their fans and the NBA in general, man, I think a lot of good stuff. Now, there was some things that went their way. There was an ugly stretch in that fourth quarter where both teams combined to shoot 0 for 24, and thank goodness Ayo Dosunmu broke that up.
Yeah.
It was definitely a rock fight for a minute there in that fourth quarter. We just got word that Paolo Banchero was playing through a torn oblique at some point in that game. Franz Wagner only played 7.5 minutes in the second half. So, you know, there were some things that bounced their way, but this is basketball. This is sports, man. You can't, you know, get mad about what's happening, or you can't make things happen. Like, it's just you gotta deal with the cards that you're given, and they did that last night, winning back-to-back games, and for the first time since November 2nd, 2022. They are above 500. So
you remember what you were doing back on November 2nd, 2022? I don't. It just
watching the beat Charlotte. That's all I remember. I think Javonte Green had a hell of a game. That night, man. The only reason I remember that is because I was going back looking to see, man, when was the last time this team was above 500? And I saw his name as a high scorer. But yeah, man.
Yeah.
A long time coming.
It was interesting because our own CHSN Bulls insider Casey Johnson reminded Patrick Williams that was the first time and the last time actually that the Bulls were over 500. And Patrick, natural, genuine reaction was just like, man, sugar honey iced tea. Now just take the first letter in the sugar honey iced tea, and you know what I'm saying. But it was just a natural reaction. But also he started to smile a little bit, and you kind of see with this Bulls team against quality groups in those wins, you're like, okay, they really are starting to build confidence and chemistry with themselves. And these are quality wins. Milwaukee, I don't know right now because there's some funny stuff going on in Milwaukee. Before we started to record this pod, they were getting their heads beat in by the Memphis Grizzlies in Memphis, and there's no issue injury-wise for the Bucks. Like, they all were playing. So I don't know what's happening with them. But still, with Giannis and Damian Lillard still on that team, I'm counting that as a quality win. So they got that win. Of course, they got the win against the Memphis Grizzlies in Memphis. And then you fast forward to what we saw Wednesday night against the Orlando Magic. But to that, you're starting to see, especially when it comes to the offensive attack for this team, the Bulls are number one in pace of play. And so when Billy postgame was asked if, that pace of play and that up-tempo offense and fast break allows them to have more opportunities from three. And Billy believed that. And also Zach believes it as well, where you're pushing the pace and you're really stepping into your shots. And that's what we saw during that crazy stretch, Drew, where it was Josh Giddey for three, Patrick Williams back-to-back three, Kobe White hit a three, then Josh Giddey again with another three. I knew Josh Giddey was feeling himself when he dribbled into that three at the top of the key, Drew. I'm like, oh, Josh is getting into his bag and letting everybody know that I was a below 35% three-point shooter for my career, but this season and right now, I'm over 40%. So is that type of chemistry and that confidence that they're building within themselves, and really is contagious, right? I mean, when you go into the season, nobody thought that this Bulls team will be able to knock down threes at the clip that they're doing, but also at the percentage. So after that Orlando game, you're looking at a team that not only is top 10 in three-point attempts, but it's great to make or attempt the shots, but you got to make the shots. They're top 10, Drew, in three-point percentage, so at 38%. So you have to give this team some major love for what they've been able to do. So you have those elements, but then you have that additional element of a guy like Nikola Vucevic, who's really been just doing Vooch work, right? I mean, he's been so impressive. And still, for my liking and kind of like, I'm cool with this, that Vooch is flying under the radar a little bit. We had a discussion on social media that, hey, Vooch could be in the running for most improved 15th season in the NBA. Why not? If Ja Morant can win most improved, I believe it was his third year in the NBA, then why not Vooch in his 15th year? Because one, ain't no way in hell Ja Morant should have been on that most improved ballot. He won it, but it's just, it didn't make sense to me. But if Vooch can do this with the way he's playing, then all power to Vooch.
Yeah, man, no doubt. The three-point shooting is, come on, man. Who saw that coming? We know he's going to be
except the Bulls and Billy Donovan.
Right. Like we know he's going to get his double-doubles. We know he's going to be like a connector in a half-court setting, making sure the ball's moving from side to side. And we've seen kind of him take advantage of Josh Giddey and the passer that Josh Giddey is. But, I mean, this three-point shooting is coming out of nowhere. And to that aspect, too, so is the three-point shooter from Jalen Smith. But I think when the season was starting, I was looking at the pace they wanted to play, the three-point shooting, the amount of threes they wanted to get up is, okay, this is going to be fun basketball to watch, like a nice departure from what we've seen the last three seasons where DeMar DeRozan kind of was forced to take the wheel a lot, just because of the type of team they had and just because of his areas of the court where he likes to operate. But I didn't take into account, silly me, like just the effect it has on opponents and how much it can wear you down if you're able to stick to it and play at a high level. And Billy's able to go 10, 11 deep into his rotation and make sure he's keeping fresh enough bodies in there to make that happen. So, hey, man, this season has been weird. We could talk about the Bulls being 3-2 and the record we thought they might have. The Nets, who they're going to see on Friday in Brooklyn, are 2-2, and they've beaten the Bucks. They've beaten the Grizzlies, and they took the Nuggets to overtime. So, I mean, I can't really make heads or tails of the season so far, but, it's gotten off to a better start than anybody could have predicted.
Yeah, man. As we record this podcast right now, have our show on October 31st, 2024. These are the, for now, current NBA standings. Of course, some games are still remaining to be played, so it could shift a little bit. But top 6 teams in the Eastern Conference. You have the Cleveland Cavaliers, number 1 at 5-0. The Boston Celtics, 4-1. They had a hell of a comeback against the Pacers in Indiana the other night, but fell short late because Pascal Siakam is Pascal Siakam. And I really love Pascal Siakam's game. Not to go on a tangent, man, but he's really worked himself into the player that he's been, not even just in Indiana, but also Toronto. And keep in mind that he's an NBA champion and winning that championship with the Raptors and Kawhi Leonard. Let's go to the 4th team, the Orlando Magic, who the Bulls just beat on Wednesday night. 5th are the Knicks. 6th are the Miami Heat. And you notice, Drew, I didn't say anything about the team in that 3rd spot.
I wonder why.
Here in Chicago, baby. Right here in Chicago. The Chicago Bulls, 3-2, have that 3rd spot. And again, people, if you're listening, wherever you get your podcast, or if you're watching on YouTube right now, we understand it is only 5 games. The Bulls are 3-2, but it just feels good to see them if the playoffs stop today. Like if it was a weird 5-game NBA season, the Bulls will be in the playoffs. But still, it's good to see that. In all seriousness, it's really good to see this team have early success. Now, the real challenge is sustaining that success throughout the rest of the season. We'll get into that a little more as we record more podcasts and have the By the Horn show presented by Toyota. But you have to know with this group that they're starting to believe even more on what they could be. And also another situation where you build that confidence is that they were able to do it without Lonzo Ball. And so when you have that situation of the guard group having to step up, like a Josh Giddey, a Kobe White, Ayo Dosunmu off the bench. And I spoke to him post-game in the locker room, Drew, and Ayo understood that, his role was going to have to be really the same role that he's carried, but also just a little bit more coming off the bench because the Bulls were struggling shooting the basketball in the first half. And I believe the first 5 baskets for Ayo were all at the rim. So I think that energy for that team, even though they were down 20 in the first half, still kept them within some type of distance. And people will say, well, Cam, they're down 20. What do you mean they were still in striking distance or still in some type of distance? Today's NBA, a 20-point lead does not mean anything. A 20-point lead could be like a 10 or 8-point lead just because teams shoot the ball so well, especially from the arc. But when you have an ability like this Bulls team, and we've seen this, we saw it in Memphis, that they can have an opportunity just to be within striking distance, they use a third quarter to really pounce on you. And that's what we saw with this group against the Orlando Magic on Wednesday, where it was a multitude of threes from Giddey, from Kobe White, from Patrick Williams, who hit back-to-back threes and really stepping into his shot. But also defensively, they really locked things down, starting with Ayo Dosunmu, who gave Jalen Suggs fits in the second half. So this group, again, understands that despite the deficit they may find themselves in, they still have the tools to get back within the ball game. Now, it would be great if they don't find themselves in a tough deficit to exert more energy to get back into a game. But you have to really believe that we're seeing something there in terms of the fight and the competitiveness of this group, Drew. Back-to-back games where they faced 20-point deficit, come back, and then they've won that game.
Absolutely. They believe. They'll tell anybody who asks that they believe in each other. And I think they take a certain level of pride, like most athletes would, in proving people wrong, especially when expectations are pretty low going into this year. And I think we got to give Ayo even more credit than what you just did. You did a beautiful job of it. But on that,
thank you, bro. I appreciate it.
on what was effectively Orlando's last possession, they were trying to get a switch so that Ayo will wind up on Paolo, with Suggs screening for Paolo. But Ayo did a great job of making sure that did not happen. P. Will stayed on Paolo. Paolo ended up giving the rock to Suggs. Ayo, sprinted back out to him, made him turn a couple times, forced him into a tough turnaround, and that was effectively the ball game. So
yeah, I'm putting the X's up. Lock them up. Lock them up. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, lock them up. Locked up Jalen Suggs for that win, man.
Yes.
Shout out to Iowa Sumo, Chicago Zone, Southside's finest.
Absolutely. He is pretty much their best point of attack defender, with Lonzo still getting off of that, knee injury, being out of the game for, 2.5 seasons. And his buddy, Patrick Williams, is kind of their prototypical wing container / I don't want to say stoppers. I don't want to put that on him, man.
Yeah, because you're not really going to stop anybody in the NBA. Your best hope is to slow them down.
Yeah.
And so I've had this conversation with people before when they'll say certain defenders like, yeah, this is a defensive stopper. I'm like, you got to watch your words because nobody's being stopped in the NBA. They may have an off night or may be slowed down. And that was the situation with Paolo, where he had 20 in the first half. And again, remember, coming off that 50-point game against the Pacers on Monday, had 20 in the first half against the Bulls. And then you saw him being slowed down against Patrick Williams, and really that group effort defensively by this Bulls team.
Yeah, man. And there's value in knowing that Patrick Williams is in that starting lineup, especially with that starting lineup, knowing you can put him on a Paolo Banchero and not have to send help maybe as much, because he can do the best job that he can do to stay in front, body him up, contest his shots. Yeah. And I think that makes, a big difference for this team, especially. I know we like to get on Pat about his offensive game and, the strides he has not made on that side of the court, but he is a very good quality defender for this team. Again, with that starting lineup, his value, I think, is higher than people necessarily want to give him credit for. But he really helped them last night.
No doubt on that. And let's go to Zach LaVine, because we're tapped in, Drew. We're in the post-game locker room with Zach LaVine, and I spoke to him about just this team's defense. One, how they were able to hold an Orlando Magic team that has not only the 7th best defensive rating in the NBA, but 7th best offensive rating in the NBA. And the Bulls held them to under 100 points and also held the Magic to only 38 points in the paint. Zach just talked about how it's not only Pat, but it was more so a team effort in making sure that they raised their level of intensity on the defensive end to get this win.
Yeah, man. Again, I think Billy spoke to it as well, just making sure that guys are not getting straight line drives to the basket, making sure that ball handlers are not seeing just open gaps where they can attack and create situations where the defense is caving in and they can draw to and kick out to their perimeter shooters. So, hey, man, guys are communicating. They're trying to do the best they can to rotate and give help where needed. And last night we saw that come to fruition. Again, some luck in terms of the type of shots that Orlando was getting, or rather the misses that were going that way, man. The Bulls have had some luck in that regard with, like I talked about, Franz only playing part of that second half, Paolo having that injury. They've had some guys be injured. Ja didn't play against them in Memphis. But again, you can only play the team that's in front of you. Right. Doing that, guys gotta learn and continue to compete. And I think you called them the Junior Mafia group. Was it the
I'm still. It's a working title. So if you got something, or for people listening out there, DM us, DM CHSN_Bulls or CHSN. Hit us up on social media. Drew, I believe your IG and Twitter handle are the same on both. So mine is the same as well. You see the handles right there if you're watching on YouTube, at Cameron Smith for me. No Ian Cameron. Don't disrespect me like that. If you want to pronounce it Cameron, then that just makes me feel even cooler. Shout out to Cam the rapper. And of course, Drew has his handle there at Drew_H, like my man MF Doom says, all caps, H _S. Steve is right there. So hit us and send us a message. We need some names for this bench group because they're deserving it.
I got to tell you, as much as we talk about the feeling we get when we see Jalen Smith and Julian Phillips, Dalen Terry, Ayo Dosunmu get into the game, I like Motor Row a little bit. Got to work with it. Got to work with it. But just the fact that the way they fly around the court to get after it. Again, they're not perfect. These guys, some of them are younger than others, and they're prone to make some mistakes. But just the way they fly around the court is something. It's a different vibe that you get from that starting group. You know,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
almost
no
like
doubt, no doubt.
it's almost like the running backs. One is going north south, another's going east west. But you can definitely feel the vibe kind of change when Billy goes to that bench group.
Yeah, those are facts. And if you send a message to us and saying bench mob, like just I'm gonna block you. Like don't do the bench mob. We had the bench mob, and we appreciate the bench mob during that D Rose era, like Ronnie Brewer, those cats like that coming off the bench and helping this Bulls team get to where they were at that time. But we've heard bench mob before. We were trying to get a little more creative with these names. So again, make sure you send us that message on all those different avenues and spots that I gave you, and we can see what we can get. But for right now, I'm feeling Junior Mafia, but the one you just threw out, Drew, you said, what was it again?
Motor Row.
I'm with that. I actually put that over Junior Mafia, you know, so, you know, I think it's more correct professionally, you know, so let's go with that one. Let's go with that one. But what I was gonna bring up after we heard that Zach sound, and to your points of what Billy was saying in terms of what they're trying to do defensively, not only just one-on-one, but it was more so against Paolo, how it wasn't just on Patrick Williams. Because if Patrick Williams, Billy said this, if Patrick Williams was on an island by himself against Paolo Banchero, then it's going to be tough for him. But what they had to do was have the other four guys come in and cut off drives, even doubling Paolo on the elbow or on the wing, deep wing, to make him give up the ball and make someone else make a play. But it goes back to our points we were making, Drew, of that chemistry and that confidence offensively, but you're starting to see it transfer defensively. And to more points on that, you heard me bring up that they held the Magic, a team that was seventh best in offensive rating coming into that game, under 100 points. But you got to listen to what the Bulls were giving up heading into that game. 123 against the Pelicans to start the season, 122 to the Bucks, 114 in the home opener against the Oklahoma City Thunder, and then 123 against the Memphis Grizzlies. So for this Magic team to stay under 100 points and to shoot horribly from three, it's a testament and a credit to this Bulls team. And I know you mentioned that, you know, there were situations where they got a little lucky, but it's basketball, it's sports. Sometimes you're going to need that. Sometimes you're going to have guys have off nights. But if you have that defender in their face challenging shots, it makes it a little bit tougher for guys to make those shots as opposed to them just having a free look and knocking it down. Because at the end of the day, these are NBA players. And they get paid real money, major money, to make these difficult shots and also the easy ones. So for this team and this Bulls group, again, salute to you. Under 100 points, the first time you've held a team under that is great. And now you got to continue it because you go to Brooklyn on Friday night. And you mentioned, Drew, a Brooklyn team that has some interesting offensive players. I'll put it that way. And when I say interesting, I'm thinking about Cam Thomas, who never has met a shot he didn't like. Like, I think Cam Thomas, as soon as he laces up his shoes and steps onto the hardwood floor and he catches the ball, he's shooting it. Like, that's just what he's been, right? But he is a bucket. We got to give him that credit. He is a bucket, along with Cam Johnson, his teammate. And Ben Simmons, who looks motivated. And we'll see how that plays out for the rest of the season. But it's another defensive task for this Bulls team. But similar to the Orlando Magic, similar to the Memphis Grizzlies, similar to what we saw against the Milwaukee Bucks especially, you go on the road and you handle business, especially when you think about the Grizzlies and the Bucks. And this is the opportunity that the Bulls have waiting for them on Friday night, Drew.
Yeah, we still don't know yet if Zach is going to be able to suit up for that game. He's got a shoulder sprain, and he's listed currently as questionable, as is Jalen Smith, who missed the game against Orlando on Wednesday. So, you know, they're going to be missing some bodies potentially. But, you know, we know that they're going to run. We know that they're going to get those threes up. But to your point earlier, I want to see the sense of urgency to come out with to avoid going down double digits even to start the game, you know, like just come out with more force, you know, just try to punch first, as some might say. So, you know, again, have to see who's going to be in the lineup for those guys, but, you know, they got something cooking right now. Again, their first back-to-back string of victories in 2 years or just about 2 years. So, hey, man, why not try to get a third?
Hey, why not, man? And stay above 500 and keep it growing and moving for sure, because you know that schedule is going to get even tougher for this Bulls team. And just hang your hat on being the 8th best defensive rated team in the NBA. And currently, as we record this show, that's where the Bulls are on October 31st. So we're not looking for that to be any kind of like ghastly ghoul thing on this October 31st, but this team for sure knows where they can get their buckets and where they can get their stops. So that'll do it for this edition of the By the Horns podcast presented by Toyota. And know that Toyota has more all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive vehicles than any other brand. So find yours and shine on. Toyota, let's go places. That's my guy, Drew Stevens. I'm Cam Smith. We'll see everybody next week. Take care. Keep on rocking with us.